Hi, welcome to the Open Case channel. Today we bring you a new case for you. I hope you enjoy it. We hope you are all well from wherever in the world you are tuned to this channel, so let's go. Very often you can see cases that exceed fiction. The vast majority are usually carried out by men, but when we talk about evil, it does not have to be a matter of gender, because sometimes the protagonists of chilling cases are women, but that does not mean that a woman is not capable of committing acts of evil. On the contrary, in many cases it does not require physical strength, but a disturbed mind. The impulse to commit incredible and unimaginable acts is part of the human being. Many think that we all have a part of darkness within ourselves, but what would you think if I told you that the protagonist of this case was an old woman who did not require to be physically stronger than her victims and that she attributed her acts to a spirit that forced her? In July 2015, in the city of St. Petersburg, Russia, there was a report of a bad smell coming from a vacant lot. When firefighters went to the place, they noticed a very pungent stench, so they suspected that someone had thrown an animal. When they entered, they found that the smell actually came from 7 black garbage bags. The stench was unbearable. Even so, one of the firemen took one and opened it. His face turned pale and his eyes were filled with astonishment. He looked at his companion and told him that it was a body. Impressed by the finding, they informed the police, who arrived after a few minutes. Upon reviewing the contents of the bags, they noticed that the remains belonged to an elderly woman. The limbs were in different bags. When reviewing the perimeter, they realized that in a nearby establishment, there was a surveillance camera. The support of the owner of the establishment was requested to provide the recordings of the previous days. Fortunately, the camera was in operation. When they played the recording tapes, they got a big surprise, because the screen showed an elderly woman carrying those bags of garbage. In the video sequence shows that the event occurred between 2:21 a.m. at 3:54 a.m. on Saturday, July 25th, 54h on Saturday, July 25th. Once she finished carrying them all, she left in the opposite direction and left. The cameras managed to see the direction that the old woman followed. Upon verifying the place, they noticed the presence of a hematic trail that led them to some apartments. Once the police moved to the site, they began to gather information, asking the residents of that place for a woman of the third age, and immediately 2 names came to light. The first was a 79-year-old woman named Valentina Ulanova, and the other was Tamara Samsonova, 68 years old. Her companion, knocking on the door of the apartment where these 2 women lived, came out to meet Tamara, immediately looked at them and nodded her head saying, "It was me." That surprising confession left the entire police force surprised. Followed by that, she invited them in. After a preliminary examination of observation, they went to the bathroom, and that is where they found evidence that indeed there had occurred the fact, because inside the bathtub were observed saws and knives still with dried blood. However, the worst was yet to come, because upon noticing that there were pieces of aluminum foil, the police imagined the worst, so one of the officers went to open the refrigerator and found inside what he had sensed. Since there were pieces of a body wrapped in aluminum foil, the surprise of the discovery left the police speechless. Once the finding was made, the officers called the Russian Investigation Committee, which serves as the main investigative authority in Russia. Due to the seriousness of the case, when doing the preliminary interrogation, she did not deny her confession, stating that she had not received help from anyone and that she was the only one guilty, because after an argument she decided to break up with Valentina. When asked if she had eaten parts of the victim's body, she was silent, leaving even more unknowns. Once the investigation committee arrived, she was arrested. She was calm and smiling. As she left, she blew kisses to the crowd of onlookers who were in the place and only managed to say, "What a pity, now all the neighbors are going to find out that I am a cannibal. What will they think of me?" Initially, the media in Russia called the case as the Nightmare on Dimitrova Street, for being the name of the street where the woman's home was located. The probable responsible, Tamara Samsonova, 68 years old, was arrested on July 28, 2015. Everyone was surprised, because cases like these are usually very few or almost null. The material author of the crime, an elderly woman about 60 m tall, slim build, kind eyes, brown hair barely touching her shoulders, which at first glance inspires compassion and trust, described by some neighbors as a good-hearted, kind-hearted person who always did favors to anyone who needed it. Although also somewhat strange, when the news of the crime spread, one of her neighbors, a friend of the victim, she also mentioned that days after not knowing about her friend, she asked Tamara where she was. She got nervous, took her by the arm and told her to please not call the police, but she never imagined she would find something like that. It was what really shocked her. Once her statement was taken, she mentioned to the investigators that it was she who killed Valentina Ulanova. After a fight over some dirty plates and cups, which she had not yet washed, for which they argued strongly, she asked him to leave, because at that time, Tamara was living with her, since her apartment was being remodeled months earlier, and Valentina offered to receive her as long as she would help her with the household chores. Once the work on her property was finished, Valentina he mentioned to Tamara that she had to leave, but she refused and did not want to leave the apartment. The relationship between them began to create friction until on July 25, due to the fight, she decided to end her life. It was at that time that he took about 50 sleeping pills and put them on his companion's plate of food, the Russian salad, a very popular dish in Russia, where it is known as Olivier salad. Because this salad was the favorite of Valentina, she did not hesitate to eat it. Tamara went to sleep, and at around 2 o'clock in the morning, she found Valentina's body on the kitchen floor. The woman was not yet dead. She still had vital functions. Still thus, he took a knife and a saw and began to cut it into parts. He started with the head, then placed it in a pressure cooker, set it on fire and boiled it. Then he proceeded to cut the other members and gradually got rid of them. It is precisely during that time when the building's surveillance cameras managed to capture the murderer, as she cut them, put them in the bags and went down to the vacant lot. Once there she left them and returned again to cut more parts. It could also be seen how he goes down with the pot and returns without it. The video of that camera was broadcast immediately and many people were able to witness the event, going viral moments later. He mentioned that he set aside the best organs to eat them, put the head in a pot to get what he could, then lowered the pot covered with a kitchen towel, took it to the vacant lot and put it in a bag. He also confessed that he appreciated the victim and that for that reason he had not eaten it before. But that thing about not washing the dishes, he couldn't take it anymore, so he finished with it. Then he thought he could live there for a few months, until his relatives or someone showed up more. The terrifying confession gradually increased. Then she said that she did not eat her breast, because it was flaccid, and that she liked them harder, like those of the girl she had eaten years ago, referring to another possible victim, once who finished leaving the 7 bags. Upon returning to the building, he took parts of the liver and ate it, adding that, despite Valentina's age, it was in good condition, since she never liked to drink. The investigators were surprised by such a statement, which she gave without showing the slightest regret. After thoroughly checking the apartment, they found esoteric and black magic books, as she was fond of astrology. In addition, they found a terrifying diary belonging to Tamara, written in his own handwriting. Said diary was written in German, Russian and English. In its content it was possible to appreciate the confession where he said that he had deprived his friend of life, cutting her into pieces to later put her parts in bags plastic and throw them in different areas of the Franceschi district. But that was not all, because it also described a series of macabre and terrifying events that alluded to the ingestion of meat, guts, eyes and tongue of at least 11 people, including her husband, and that her favorite part was the lungs. In addition, she made some representative drawings of how she dismembered her victims and how she tasted their meat in different meals. In many fragments, he mentioned his daily life, which apparently seemed boring and unexciting to him. He also talked about how he ended the life of one of his tenants, using the same modus operandi. He ate it in the same way and enjoyed his lungs. When they questioned her about what they had found in the diary, she stated that it was all true, but that she was influenced by someone else. She was asked about her husband, and there she said that in 2005 she had deprived him of his life by stabbing him while he slept. Then he cut him with a chainsaw and ate his private parts and the rest of the body. He scattered it all over the neighborhood in garbage bags. The body was never found, and he only told his neighbors that he had run away with another woman. Once the investigation was underway, the police tried to intertwine different cases of people who had been found in the same way as the victim. Then, it was possible to identify a subject, whose body had been found in 2003, without arms and legs. When reviewing Tamara's belongings, they found a blood-stained business card belonging to this man, and in August of that same year, the victim's head was searched because it could not be found. Her hands and internal organs did not appear either, and to a large extent the investigators think that perhaps Tamara ate the head, and that is the reason for not finding it. After analyzing the diary, it was established that if everything was true, at least 11 people had passed through Tamara's hands. Although without traces of all the bodies, they could not condemn her for all of them. When he was in court, while waiting to enter the court, he would stare at the cameras with a sheepish smile, and from time to time, he would blow kisses to the reporters, to whom he said, "I knew they would come. It is a disgrace for me. Now all my city will know. I see myself tormented by a maniac who forced me to murder." When the woman was taken to court, she applauded and smiled happily for being there. She mentioned to the judge to be ready for court, adding that all his actions he did deliberately, and that with the last murder he had closed his chapter. Then he said that he had no other place to live, that he was an old person, and that he had thought 77 times about it and then decided that he should be in prison, die there, to later have the state bury her. The start of the trial caused expectation and social commotion. It was even broadcast live on television news. The prosecutor mentioned that due to her mental health, the old woman represented a danger to society, and a psychiatrist stated that there was a risk that to murder again, so at the end of the trial, she was confined in a mental hospital. So on November 26 of that same year, Tamara was subjected to a psychiatric examination, the result of which shows that the woman is dangerous to herself, for herself and for others. She was sent to a psychiatric hospital in Kazan for treatment. She mentioned feeling a deep admiration and fascination for Andrei Chikatilo, because what attracted her to him was his story and the things he did. Tamara Samsonova was born on April 25, 1947, in Krasnoyarsk Krai, Russia, the daughter of alcoholic parents, survivors of World War II, who over time managed to have connections with the government. Having a medium lifestyle, her childhood, it was completely normal. Even so, she remembers that her parents told her terrifying stories about how the population of St. Petersburg had to eat rats, dogs and cats to survive. Since she was little, she was very intellectual. She always liked letters. When she finished her high school studies, she went to live in Moscow, since she wanted to study languages, so she entered the State University of Linguistics, where she learned 3 languages, and even graduated with honors. When she finished, she went to live in St. Petersburg. There she meets a guy named Alexei Samsonov, whom she would marry years later. In the year 1971, the couple settled in a new construction in the panel house number 4 on Dimitrov Street. While there, he began working in a travel agency, gave private language classes, and later found a job in the Grand Hotel Europa, where she lasted approximately 16 years. And as time went by, her behavior went from normal to strange, being hospitalized on 3 occasions, in different psychiatric hospitals, where she was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. Later, her husband disappeared out of nowhere. It is then that Tamara decides to rent a room in her apartment. Around September 6, 2003, during a discussion, she ended the life of the subject, a 44-year-old man, who for a long time saw himself reflected in Tamara's diary. In March 2015, he met Valentina Ulanova, the last victim, for whom this case was discovered, after her friend asked her to let her live for a while they were fixing her apartment. After that, the crime sequence mentioned at the beginning of this video. To date, it is not known exactly how many crimes he committed. Currently, she is being investigated for 14 murders, and it was confirmed that she indeed committed cannibalism with most of her victims. Her weak and kind appearance never aroused suspicion. Today she is known as the Ripper grandmother, Baba Yaga, which the Russians refer to as an old woman, bony with a nose, pointed and sharp teeth, an evil and cruel being, but not totally evil, who eats people's flesh solely for the fun of it. I hope you liked this video. If so, don't hesitate to give us a thumbs up, to comment and share. I invite you to subscribe to this channel if you are not already, and activate the notification bell to receive the latest uploads. See you next time.